Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Famularo. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a career coach in the UConn Center for Career Development. I am here today to present the Workforce Recruitment Program virtual information session. And the reason I am presenting is because I am the UConn School Coordinator for the Workforce Recruitment Program, which means that I am the person at UConn who coordinates and facilitates all the details to make sure that UConn students can participate in the program. So I will be going through and talking about kind of all the logistics of the program, and then I will be leaving some time at the end for questions as well. So to get started, what is the Workforce Recruitment Program? Workforce Recruitment Program, also commonly known as WRP, which is how I will be referring to it throughout the rest of this presentation, is a recruitment and referral program that connects federal and private sector employees with highly motivated college students and recent graduates with disabilities. So a shorter version of that is it's a program that allows students with disabilities and also alumni with disabilities to be considered for federal jobs. The program is managed by the U.S. Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Defense. They are kind of the organizations that founded this program, and it's really important to them that students with disabilities and alumni with disabilities have access to jobs within the federal government. The goals of the Workforce Recruitment Program, building off of what the previous slide shared, are to bring students with disabilities into the employment process, because sometimes there are kind of extra barriers that students with disabilities face when they're seeking employment. Help college career centers and disability services office connect their students with disabilities around employment, so building relationships both on and off campus. Function as a pipeline to bring new talent into the federal government to fill mission critical jobs, which a mission critical job is defined as a job that's kind of necessary to keep the federal government running. So they're very important jobs. And lastly, break down attitudinal barriers in the workplace, which essentially means that, you know, there have been instances where various employers will not hire an individual with disabilities based on perceptions that they might have of them and their ability to do a particular job. And this program is designed to break down those perceptions and make sure that employers are really seeing the value that students with disabilities can bring to their workplaces. So one of the most important slides that we have in the presentation today is the important dates of the Workforce Recruitment Program. And I'm going to go through them one by one. So this year, the Workforce Recruitment Program application opened on Monday, August 22nd. And the application process has two components, which is why you notice two different deadlines on the slide. So the first step in the process is to register for the program. So when you register, it takes about 30 seconds, and you're just going to input your name, your email address, and let us know that you're interested in participating in the program. And I'll show you where to do that a little bit later. That must be done by Thursday, October 13th. Then once you're registered for the program and your registration is approved, which is something that I do as the UConn school coordinator for the Workforce Recruitment Program, then you have until Sunday, October 16th to submit your application for the program, which is a little bit more in depth. That's where you're going to submit your resume and some additional information, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Then looking forward, the other important dates to note are that the informational interview period, which is the next phase of the process, takes place between Monday, October 24th and Wednesday, November 16th. So some point during that window, you will be conducting an interview with a representative from the Workforce Recruitment Program. And then lastly, if you go through the full process of the Workforce Recruitment Program, you will be added to the employment database, which is where employers can go to find candidates for various jobs. And that database will be released to all the employers that are participating in the program in mid-December. So starting in mid-December is when you might be hearing from employers about opportunities through the program. So I'm going to go through all of these phases in a little bit more detail, but I just wanted to give you the overview that these are the different phases of the program and all the deadlines that you should remember. So who can participate in the Workforce Recruitment Program? What does the eligibility look like? There are a couple of different qualifications for the program. The first is that you must be a student or recent graduate with a disability. And the way that the Workforce Recruitment Program defines a disability is you must be eligible for the Schedule A hiring authority for persons with disabilities, which is a process that the federal government has implemented to make sure that people with disabilities are not excluded from their hiring processes. And I have some more information about that for you as well. I get a lot of questions every year about, does my disability count? And the answer is almost always yes, as long as it falls under Schedule A, which is pretty much every disability that at least I'm aware of. Second eligibility criteria is that you must be a U.S. citizen. So unfortunately, if you're not a U.S. citizen, you're not eligible for this program because there are so many federal jobs that are participating in it. And then you must either be a current student or a recent graduate. So current students must be enrolled full time. So, you must be taking a full course load. And if you have an accommodation where your full course load is a different number of credits than other students, that's totally fine, as long as for you personally, it's considered a full course load. And then if you're a recent graduate, you must have graduated recently. So on or after April 1st, 2020. So just to review quickly, you need to have a disability, be a U.S. citizen, and then be either a current student or a recent graduate. If you have any questions about the eligibility criteria, please let me know. I'm happy to consult with you individually. Okay, so now this is some more information about Schedule A, which is a little bit of a complicated part of this process. So like I mentioned a few minutes ago, Schedule A is a hiring mechanism for people with disabilities that allows them to be more quickly hired into the federal workplace. It improves the federal government's ability to hire individuals with disabilities, and it helps the federal government be a model employer so that hopefully other employers who are not part of the federal government will take on similar approaches to hiring people with disabilities. Candidates are eligible for Schedule A if they have an intellectual disability, a psychiatric disability, or a severe physical disability. So if your disability falls in any of those three categories, you are eligible for this program. And I would say that probably most of the disabilities that I have been asked about in the past do fall under one of these three categories. I would say the most important part to note here about Schedule A is that in order to be hired for a job through the Workforce Recruitment Program, you must be qualified for Schedule A and get a letter saying so that you can give to the HR department, the Human Resources Department at the company that hires you. So for example, let's say you go through this program and the Department of Defense says, hey, Lisa, I want to hire you for this position through Schedule A. Can you provide me with a Schedule A letter? That's something that you will have to do. And there are some links here, as well as on the WRP website, about how to obtain a Schedule A letter and just kind of reiterating the eligibility for Schedule A. But the long story short is that it just has to come from a medical provider. So whatever medical provider has diagnosed your disability, you can get the letter from them. It's something that they should be familiar with. They probably have written Schedule A letters before, and then just take a copy of it and submit it to the Human Resources Department at the company. So it's not too complicated of a process. It's just a little bit of an extra step that I want to make sure everybody's aware of. Like I just said, a Schedule A letter can be provided by any healthcare provider or medical provider. This is just a little bit more information about what that includes. So this documentation can be, it must be on official letterhead, and it must be signed by either a licensed medical professional, a rehabilitation professional, or any federal or state agency that provides disability benefits. So most people just get it from their doctor, but these are some other options as well. One important clarification is that this letter does not need to mention your specific disability if you don't want to disclose your disability to the employer that you're working with, which you do not need to do. All you need your medical provider to say is that you are eligible for Schedule A. And there is a sample Schedule A letter here as well that you can take a look at to see what the language might be. But at the end of the day, you don't have to disclose anything that you don't want to. Last details here about Schedule A. All candidates who are applying for the Workforce Recruitment Program must identify that they're eligible for Schedule A. So it's not necessarily something that we are going to be verifying. It's something that we're trusting you to tell us when you initially apply or register for the program. It's just later on, make sure that you have the opportunity to get a letter so that you can provide that as part of the application process. WRP employers use Schedule A to hire for both internships and jobs. So it's not just full-time jobs, it can be internships as well. Like I said earlier, you need to provide a letter if you're ultimately hired for an opportunity. And just one tip that we have is it's a good idea to have your letter ready in advance, because let's say in January an employer contacts you and says, hey, we want to hire you for an opportunity, but we need your Schedule A letter and we need you to get back to us in 2 weeks. That gives you only a 2-week time frame to get that Schedule A letter. So the earlier you get the letter, the more likely you are to just have it on hand if an employer asks you for it, and that way you can get back to them more quickly. And you don't need to upload the letter to the WRP website. It's just something that you need to keep for yourself and then ultimately share it with the employer that reaches out to you. So I know that this is a lot of information about Schedule A, and it sounds really complicated, and it is a little bit complicated. So if anybody has questions about Schedule A, you can just Google it, or you can look through the links in this presentation. Okay, so moving on to more of the logistics of the Workforce Recruitment Program. The first step, like we talked about earlier, is to register for the program. And the way that you do that is by going to wrp.gov. When you go to wrp.gov, you can see on the left-hand screenshot here that there's a button that says Student Registration Now Open. You'll go ahead and click that button and you'll complete the registration process. We recommend using a computer to register just because it is a government website and it's got a lot of interesting formatting elements. So it's just a little bit easier to use on a computer rather than a mobile device. And if you have any questions about the registration process, let me know. But typically, once you submit your registration form, within 24 hours or so, you will get an email from me letting you know that your registration was approved. Here's just a little bit more detail about the registration process. So as part of the registration, you will fill out your name, your email address, you'll agree to the rules of the program. Then I will approve your registration. You will receive an email about what to do next, which includes creating your account and completing your application. And as you can see on this screenshot, there is a green button that says New Student Application, and that is where you will actually fill out your application for the program. Every year, we do have a number of students who register for the program, but then don't end up completing their application. So if you're registered, I would highly recommend that you complete your application because it is pretty quick. There aren't a lot of elements of the application, so it doesn't take that long to fill out. So I would highly recommend, completing the full process. In terms of what the application entails, these are the elements. So first off, you are going to fill out your identification and contact information, just some basic info. Then you are going to submit your resume. And if you have any questions about your resume, that is something that's a service that we provide here in the Center for Career Development. So you can come schedule a meeting with me and we can go through your resume one-on-one to make sure that it's as good as possible for this program. You will also need to submit a transcript, which can be an unofficial transcript that you download from the student admin system, or you can request an official transcript through the registrar's office. Either one is fine. Personally, I recommend the unofficial transcript just because it's a little bit easier to access. Like you can access it yourself rather than going through the registrar to get an official transcript. You will also need to fill out academic information like your major, your degree, and your GPA. So just pretty straightforward information. Your job and location preferences. So they'll ask you to pick different industries that you're interested in as well as locations. And if you don't know, that's fine. It's only your preferences. It's not like specifically requiring you to be in those certain industries or areas. And then lastly, it does ask for your disability and demographic information, but that is private. That is only for kind of assessing the program, the Workforce Recruitment Program. It is not shared with employers. So don't worry too much about filling that section out. There is a optional section of the application as well, where you're able to submit a cover letter, letters of recommendation, writing samples, or any other documents that you feel would strengthen your application. It is optional though. So if you want to, go for it. If you don't want to, that's fine. It's totally up to you to decide what you want to do with that section. And one last tip, do not submit any information through your application that includes like sensitive information. So your social security number, health records, anything like that. That is information that employers do not need to know. So don't include it. Just include the things that are asked for as part of the application or some of the optional components if you'd like to. After you submit your application, the next phase of the process is the informational interview process. And you'll notice that this is called an informational interview rather than just an interview. And that's an important difference, because when you are getting to the interview phase of this process, you are having a conversation with a representative from the Workforce Recruitment Program rather than a formal interview. So they might ask you some casual questions about your career interests and your skills and things like that, but it's not like a traditional job interview in the sense that they are, grilling you and trying to get certain answers to certain questions. It's a lot more casual, and it also allows you to ask them questions, because all of the representatives of the Workforce Recruitment Program are government employees. So you can ask them about what it's like to work for the federal government, and that can help you decide if you want to accept a job that you've been offered through the Workforce Recruitment Program. More specifically, as it says on the slide here, you will be interviewing, or you will do your informational interview with a federal government employee. You will have a conversation where you ask for career advice and learn about federal service. The recruiter or the person you're meeting with will provide you some general feedback on your resume and just on your overall application. And it's designed to be more of a learning opportunity for you and a way for the employer to get to know a little bit more about your career interests. So that way, the employers who reach out to you can make sure that they're reaching out to you with the right types of opportunities. Because if you're interested in, pursuing a career in data science, you wouldn't necessarily want someone to reach out to you about a career in environmental advocacy, because that's not, those two things are different. So making sure that we know your interests and we know your skills through these informational interviews is really important. And that's the main purpose of this part of the process. We do have some advice on how to prepare for your interview. So we do recommend, like I said earlier, coming into our office and scheduling an appointment to go over your resume, but we can also prepare for your interview as well. I can talk about your resume, I can talk about your interviews, or I can do a combination of the two. But when you're going into the interview, these are some things that we recommend having ready to go. So the first, which is the second bullet on the screen here, is a list of questions to ask your recruiter about federal service and career advice. So if you go into the interview and you don't have anything prepared to ask, there might be some awkward silence throughout the interview. So instead, we would recommend preparing a list of questions, such as things like, what is your job and what does a typical day look like for you? Or how long have you been working with the federal government, and why have you been there for that period of time? Maybe you might ask questions about if they've worked at multiple different government agencies, what are the main differences and which ones did they like better? Things like that. So coming up with questions that will help you make a better decision about your career goals is what you want to do here. And that's something that we can help with if you're not sure what to ask. The second thing you'll want to do to prepare is research federal careers and agencies. So when you're going into this interview, it would be helpful to know some government agencies that you might be interested in. So for example, I was working with a student in the program last year who was really interested in human resources. So we looked together at the Department of Labor, because the Department of Labor kind of oversees the employment trends in the country, and that employment is related to human resources. So that was a really good fit for that student. So going in and knowing about different agencies can be really helpful. The other reason that can be helpful is the person who's interviewing you might not be in the same industry that you are. So that same student that I was talking about from last year, she was interested in human resources, but the recruiter that she spoke to was in nursing. And even though they were in different industries, the student was still able to get some really helpful information about what it's like to work in the federal government from that person, even though it was in a totally different department. So just keep in mind that your questions should be a little bit more general about the federal government, and that even if your interviewer is in a different industry than you, they can still provide some really helpful advice. Part 2 of preparing for your interview is during your interview, be ready to receive feedback. So like the previous slide said, the recruiter might provide you with some information about your resume or your application. So I would recommend having either a printed copy of your resume and your transcript and your other application materials with you during the interview, or have it like pulled up on your computer or something like that so that you can take a look at them and you can have a conversation. And then you can also take some notes, because you will want to probably implement the feedback that they give you so that when employers look at your materials, they can see the updated versions. So that's just something to keep in mind. Be ready to receive that feedback. Also be prepared to answer questions, not just ask questions. So like I said earlier, be ready to talk about your academic, professional, and extracurricular experiences. You don't have to be prepared to go into a lot of detail about these things, but just don't be surprised when they ask you questions about these things. And then lastly, you're going to want to give some highlights about your successes and how you solve problems, because those are 2 things that employers really want to know about. They want to know some of your accomplishments in life and what you're really proud of. And they also want to know about your problem solving skills, because those are things that are important for any job, your ability to solve problems, and they want to make sure that those are skill sets that you have. One detail I forgot to mention, which is really important at this phase, is that these interviews will all be virtual. So they will either be over the phone or through a video call. And that for that reason, you don't have to prepare to travel or go anywhere in person. However, if it's a video call, you do want to make sure that you're still dressing appropriately. And for both a video call and a phone call, you want to make sure that you are in a quiet space and you're able to devote all of your attention to the interview. Finally, after the interview, what happens? So like I mentioned earlier, if you go through the entire process with the Workforce Recruitment Program, so you submit your application, you do the interview, that means you will be added to the employment database for the employers. And this application process is different than any other application process you will participate in. But the way it works is that this database with hundreds of students' names will be released to the employers, and the employers will be able to go through and click on each student's name. They will be able to look at your resume, they'll be able to look at your transcript, and then they'll reach out to you if they have an opportunity that they want to share with you. So that starts in December. The employers get access to it in December. Then between December of this year, December 2022, all the way through December of next year, 2023, employers can reach out to you about an opportunity. So you are essentially eligible for opportunities through this program for an entire year, which is great. When an employer reaches out to you, the process from there will vary. So some employers will ask you to do an interview for their role. Other employers might just offer you an opportunity. Other employers might have you do multiple rounds of interviews if that's part of their hiring process. So it's hard to say exactly what things will look like after the database is opened up, but each employer will give you instructions about that when you get to that point, but you don't have to worry about that until December. One tip about your application is you want to make sure that it's up to date all year, so that if an employer does want to reach out to you, they have the most accurate picture of who you are, as well as your most updated contact information. So for example, if you get a new phone number, you want to update that. Or maybe if you graduate and you decide to stop using your UConn email address, you would want to update that as well. You can update your documents anytime you'd like on the WRP website, even after you submit your application. So just keep that in mind. One other example is if you want to upload a new resume, maybe you want to add a new experience or a new transcript after you get your grades back for the fall semester or the spring semester, you can update those things as well. The last thing that I want to mention here is participating in the Workforce Recruitment Program is not a guarantee of employment. So if you are really, really set on having an internship or a job next summer, you will want to try to find other ways to find those opportunities rather than just counting on the Workforce Recruitment Program. There are many students who do get hired through the program, but it's not everybody. So pursuing multiple avenues is always a good idea. In terms of how employers will contact you if they have an opportunity that they want to discuss with you further, they will reach out to you directly by email or by phone. They do not come through me as a school coordinator or through the Workforce Recruitment Program itself. We are no longer involved in the process after December. So we don't keep track of this information. If you do hear from an employer and you want to let me know, I would love to hear that because that helps me keep track of how UConn students are doing with the program. And it's always just great to know how you personally are doing, but it's not required. Employers may contact you as early as January and continue through June for summer jobs. And also then they continue through December for talking about permanent jobs. And then lastly, if you are connected with a job offer or interview, make sure that you ask all relevant questions about that opportunity. So make sure you get contact information from that company so you can maintain communication with them, but also make sure you know about the location, the job title, and job responsibilities to make sure that it's a good fit before you accept the opportunity or go any further in that process. And once you get to this point, if you have any questions about the process, that's something that our office can help with as well. If you wanted to come in for a career coaching appointment, we can talk through like how to interact with an employer and even do some negotiating if that's something that you would like to do. All right, so my last slide for today is I just want to share a brief success story about a student who participated in this program last year. This is a picture of Amanda Brenner. She was a student in the School of Social Work here at UConn, and she graduated in May of 2021. And she participated in the Workforce Recruitment Program last year, and she wasn't necessarily confident that it was going to be a fruitful program for her because she didn't hear from any employers for the first couple of months. But then I believe it was in April, she was reached out to by the Department of Labor asking her if she was interested in a job. And when they first reached out, she was thinking, Department of Labor, that doesn't really have to do with social work. But it turns out that the Department of Labor was launching a new program that had to do with, I don't know all the details, but it had to do with children and like a support program for children, which does relate to Amanda's experience in social work. And so Amanda interviewed for the position and ended up being offered the position. And so she did get her first full-time job after graduation through the Workforce Recruitment Program. I actually sat down and spoke with Amanda to hear a little bit more about her experience, and I wrote up a interview with her that will be posted to the Center for Career Development website very soon. So if you would like to hear more about Amanda's experience and hear more about like what did she put in her application, what did her informational interview look like, what was the overall timeline, things like that, you can go ahead and read that on the Center for Career Development website. It's just not posted quite yet. It'll be up there very soon. So last but not least, I did just want to share my contact information one more time. I know that the Workforce Recruitment Program is a very specific program and there's a lot of like rules and regulations with it. So if you ever have questions about what to do or the best way to approach something, please just, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would say that either email or phone is a good way to contact me. My phone is my office phone number and it will reach me directly during the day. If you call at night or on the weekends, you can leave me a message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So at this point, I will happily take any questions, but I will go ahead and stop the recording for those of you who will be watching it later. And I would like to wish everybody the best of luck in their Workforce Recruitment Program application process.